So the last time I talked about Sinatra Says, we looked at his anti-conspiracy theory against the news, right? Where he's talking, trying to make fun of the news channels conspiracy about Trump not leaving office, and we went through why that's dumb. And in the midst of that, he laid out his own conspiracy theory and basically bought into all the mail-in voting fraud stuff. Today, we're going to look at a video where he responds to a grad video that kind of, very simple, kind of lay out the topics and stuff for like sociology and some stuff around gender and then race and racial identity, stuff like here. Just basically that these graduate students made to try to explain what they're doing. Really simple, and a lot of it's stuff here, but he shows he doesn't have a fucking clue about any of the topics here, and it's all kind of my common sense is better than yours. My uneducated common sense is better than what people study this stuff for. So let's look into that.
You know, honestly, I don't know what I find more disturbing. The fact that this video was made in the first place, or the fact that it was made by a graduate school for social workers. Yeah, it's not great. This comes from a graduate school of social work. So, yeah. But come on, man. This art style is absolutely abhorrent. And B, this has got to be the single dumbest thing I have ever seen in my life. We're going to take a look at it, and I'm probably going to get real triggered.
Oh yeah, he does. He will. And it's not dumb, right? And we'll explain each little bit. He's going to stop a lot in what he thinks is wrong.
But before we do that, if you're interested in supporting the channel, hit up that Patreon and PayPal all down below. Share it out on your social medias and smash that like button.
So do all that when this video goes live on my YouTube channel to my channel.
Okay,
Fuck this guy.
Let's take a look at this video.
Think of a baby when it's born as a simple stick figure.
Babies are not born as stick figures. I don't know who needs to hear that, but they're just not. They're not.
Like, how did we fall into this? Like, former people here that used to watch like anti-SJW stuff, when it's just this dumb pedantry thing to miss any kind of basic little metaphor. Like, how do people fall for it? Like, Undoomed is notorious for this. This is his response style, and this is very much an Undoomed style response, without all the bells and whistles that Undoomed can provide.
Not blank robots that you download a personality to, like in Futurama. It's not how it works.
They're never saying that, right? This is just like a simple explainer video to explain identity and stuff like that.
Identity is like the first set of clothes given to them by others who expect them to wear that style throughout their life.
But that's not how that works. That's not how any of that works. Just because you have a baby and you dress it a certain way... Okay, wait, hold on. Are you trying to make the argument that someone's personality is best based solely around how they're dressed and what things they wear? Yeah. Weak-willed individuals on your side, huh?
No. So what's being explained here is gender identity is one of the first things that forms. It's one of the first frameworks that we look at the world around us, right? This is what they're talking about. Now, obviously, they're trying to do little metaphors and things like analogies to try to help explain this concept, the bigger concept. But this is what it is. Like, our identity is one of the first things we pick on, our gender identity especially, right? So science shows, and he's going to try to argue against the science here in the future, but the science shows about 2 years old, we start to develop that. And by 4, in most people, it's solidified, right? Even if you're someone who's trans and you struggle with the gender dysphoria and stuff, trying to, be a boy, all that other stuff, and you see the identity you have and the framework that you've developed inside is that of a girl, right? Or vice versa, or anywhere along the thing if you're non-binary and stuff as well.
Consider their personal style, might be color or hairstyle, as clothes that they would pick to best match their personality.
Here's another just absolutely crazy idea. Your hairstyle and the color of your hair and all that, you don't really have control over what color your skin is or what color your hair is. So saying that you have to have a certain personality based off of that is kind of insane and a little bit racist.
Likewise,
There's nothing about race or anything like that, right? This is basically explaining gender expression and how we express our gender identity and stuff, right? And you can change the color of your hair dye, stuff like that, change your style, right? Like girls got to wear pretty long hair. You can't have the real short boy hair, right? Those kind of things that feminists for decades and stuff have pushed back against and have normalized to some extent on cis women and stuff now, right? Or longer hair on boys.
gender identity is shaped at birth when a doctor assigns gender.
Assigning gender, in other words, observing reality, observing things in front of him. Isn't this supposed to be the party of science that listens to doctors? Now doctors are just randomly and arbitrarily and capriciously assigning gender to people when they pop out of the womb? Ooh, doubt it.
Grandparents then begin to describe.
I mean, that's not what's being said here, right? You come out with whatever the criteria, with the criteria that they use to say, oh, it's a boy, it's a girl, or something like that, and then you force that identity, whether or not as the child grows up, that's the identity that they form, right, about themselves, right? And there's a lot of conflict for trans individuals who are assigned a different gender at birth than what they identify as.
Boys as having strong cries or gift girls pink headbands with bows.
That sounds a little too specific to be something that you're just talking about. Are you okay? Did something happen to you? Do you need to talk to somebody? If so, don't talk to me.
So all this is that the reinforcement of that gender assigned at birth kind of thing is what they're talking about, right? And how society enforces that gender identity, and that's where things like gender dysphoria comes from, when your identity doesn't match the other stuff, right?
For some, gender assignment and all that is associated with it is without conflict.
Quote, for some, unquote. You mean 99.99% of the population? They don't have a problem with how they were born? Jeez. It almost sounds like these people think you're immoral and unvirtuous if you don't have an issue with the way you were born. The same thing that they tell us over and over and over again should be accepted. Sounds like you need to do some accepting.
That is a reach. And then for the some thing, right? So that doesn't necessarily have to apply just to the cis and trans difference, right? That can apply to people who are gender nonconforming, right? Which we'll get into later, and we're going to get into some yikes stuff later from Sinatra. But, so if, like, I always look at, they're not the original band to sing it, but I remember Tesla's version better, Being Alive, when that one came out, of Signs, right? Signs everywhere, signs, blocking up the scenery, changing my mind. Talks about a guy wearing long hair, and in the hippie movements when it was written in the 70s and stuff. So it's talking about like the hippies and how society was rejecting men who wore longer hair and stuff like that, and they would treat you different and all these other things. So wanting longer hair, a certain hairstyle or crane's hair, or not wearing like super frilly dresses and stuff as girls or something, or if you're a guy and that's what you want to wear, right? And being told that you can't wear that stuff by society, and there's some conflict in the things you do when you want to express yourself in your gender. So just beyond the trans cis stuff into general gender nonconforming, which I think there's about and this is where like a John Doyle video did it a while back, where he mixed up gender nonconforming, the large sample of gender nonconforming, and tried to use that as trans ideology is going into school, when all it is guys wearing longer hair, girls wearing shorter hair, stuff like that, or girls dressing more masculine and guys dressing more feminine or stuff, things like that would just be gender nonconforming. I think it was like something like 25-30% of youth are gender nonconforming. So even beyond whether or not they're cis or trans at that point, which is much smaller in that group.
Mature, we carry this assigned identity as we engage with social structures like schools.
You mean we exist? in our lives day to day. Yeah, that's kind of how life works.
Cisgender kids
Yeah, but these identities, these categories and stuff, and how we perform and stuff. So this would be like if you picked up the doing gender essay from 40 years ago now. That kind of outlines the stuff that has turned into how we understand gender and stuff now, right? Pretty influential essay. But yeah, so a guy's got to be a certain way in society, and so society is going to have certain expectations on people that are guys and certain expectations on people that are women, right? And those are the expectations there, and those can be an issue from the outside society on the person, on their identity, even as a guy, right? And these manifest in things like we would talk about, like toxic masculinity and stuff, or the things with like rape culture and not taking, the you were dressed provocatively kind of stuff, then so you deserved it, right? The victim blaming that comes along with that. And so that's how these categories, which is one of the earliest ways we see the world, right? Like who's ever done like the cooties stuff, it comes very, very early in life when looking at that stuff. But how we engage with the world because of our identity, and how the world and society engages with us based on that identity and the structures and the roles and stuff that are assigned to that identity.
go into their assigned boys or girls bathroom without hesitation.
I can already see where this is going, and I guarantee you that it is just going to sound as dumb as you think it is.
Walking into a different bathroom is met with redirection.
Yeah, they kind of have to do that because it's not the school's job to talk to kids about why boys have a dangle and girls have a woohoo. And also, crazy, don't let kids go into other kids' bathrooms. It's really simple. Really fucking simple.
For transgender and gender queer
here.
people, however, the assignment of gender at birth is painful.
So are we still talking about kids or not? Because there's no such thing as transgender kids. That doesn't exist. Transgender kids are just kids with overbearing parents who want attention. That's all that is. I assume we're still talking about children because you drew a little kid there.
So, and this is where this idea here is that there are no transgender kids. Like I said, all the science shows, right? And so, hey, party of science, group of science, right? Sinatra Says, Shred's person, I'm for science and all this other stuff, and then reject the actual science. Gender identity typically starts forming at 2. By 4 is solidified in most people, right? It may take a little longer and stuff there, right? So there are, without a doubt, transgender kids. And it has absolutely nothing to do with overbearing parents, right? Because if it had absolutely everything to do with overbearing parents, kids who were trans would develop into cis children later in life, right? From those parents that don't want their kids being trans, right?
Identities create tensions and are in opposition to assigned gender roles, behaviors, and expectations from friends, family, and society.
I swear to God, times haven't changed. People have. Because when I was growing up, which albeit was not all that long ago, 20 or so years, manly girls were called tomboys. Girlish boys were called sissies. They were not going, oh, little Timmy likes to play with dolls. Schedule the surgery immediately.
So nobody's saying that, right? You can still be a very feminine cis man, right? That's perfectly fine. That doesn't mean... So this is the whole kind of fear-mongering around. And it's one thing like Ariel Scarcella likes to do. Is like, oh, I played hockey, I played with the boys and all this other stuff, and I'm a lesbian and stuff. They would have made me into a boy. And it's like, well, you weren't trans, so no, that you wouldn't have gone down that route. Right, there are diagnostic criteria for diagnosing kids who are trans and stuff like that, right? Yeah, in the traditional binary sense, right? To where, because that's where largely the surgeries and stuff go, right? Like non-binary people aren't usually going to have any of the surgeries until they're adults, anyways. But we're talking about, male to female, female to male. Binary transitions when you talk about the surgeries, but nobody is suggesting what he's suggesting here, right? But that clip that they showed and was talking about society was just, I explained it earlier, but that's just how it works and how these things work and interact with each other. and what causes a lot of the distress for people who are trans. But I mean, there's even plenty of distress among cis people, right? And this is kind of the theory around toxic masculinity, right? There's certain things society expects of men that are very, very toxic, and when men can't live up to those expectations, they all sorts of bad feelings, identity stuff like here. Suicide is a big one. And so, hey, maybe we fix that issue, right? And maybe we push that, hey, men don't have to be what society is telling them they have to be, right? Just like women don't have to be what society is telling women to be. And we've normalized some of that more amongst women, through feminism and the like.
Like, that never happened. Like, oh, little Timmy's a little sissy. That's it. And I'm using the term Timmy as somebody I actually know. I knew from when I was a little kid. He turned out to be gay. Shocking absolutely nobody. He came out to me one night, was like, Matt, I got to tell you I'm gay. It's like, yeah, everybody knew, dude. Everybody. So it let people be gay. Just because you're gay doesn't mean you're trans. It's silly.
Nobody's saying that. Not at all. Like, zero people are saying that.
They worry which bathroom is safe for me.
Nurse's bathroom, always preferable. 100% of the time.
This tension also happens around language. In the U.S., English is considered a primary or sole language.
Yeah, it is. And
this affects everyone's identity. Unless you're in a foreign language class or a bilingual school, there can be stigma about speaking languages other than English in the classroom or in the playground.
No, not really. You're in America. You should learn the language. And if you can't, have an interpreter with you or something. If you want to come here and not assimilate, the whole country can't change to fit your needs. Not every American can be expected to speak every language in the world just because everyone wants to live here.
So that's not what's being said at all, right? There is a stigma against speaking foreign languages and stuff here, right? There's plenty of videos we can go find online where some racist woman gets mad at a Latinx person who's speaking Spanish with their mother, right? Or parents or something like that. And that racist person will turn around, you need to speak English here. All this other, basically what he's saying here is what's being done, right? So that affects, there's a very big stigmatization against speaking your own language, right? And you can exist, like, I'll get to it here. He's going to talk about some other countries here, and we're going to dig into some of the languages is there that people don't understand, or from America don't understand about these other countries. Pretty, I don't want to say not well-traveled stuff, but just not well-researched or well-read.
That's not fair. English is the basic language of the entire world. So if you want to live here, if you want to assimilate, speak it. If not, that's perfectly fine too, but you can't expect everybody to kowtow to your whim because you didn't want to learn it.
You may receive messages that English is the only acceptable language in school.
Yeah, school teachers kind of have enough on their plate. I think the only language they should know beside English is whatever language they teach. If it's Spanish, German, whatever, sign language. That's it. You cannot expect a teacher to learn every language.
The social
Nobody's expecting teachers to learn every language, right? Like, you can make some accommodations, right, for people that move here and to help them learn better, in the language that they're familiar with, right? You'd still have English classes and still be learning English and stuff like that. You travel here, but, saying, oh, you can't ever use your native tongue or anything like that is what they're talking about.
Messaging is that speaking another language is shameful and problematic.
No, you're lying right now. That's not the messaging at all. The messaging is, you're in America. Speak English. Or at least have somebody who can.
So, no, guys, that's not the message. That's totally the message.
Can translate for you. Accommodations can be made, but you have to help us to help you.
While speaking English, ideally without an accent, is rewarded as good behavior.
Yeah, I don't know so much about the behavior aspect of it. I don't think it's bad behavior if you can speak another language. But if that's what you want to put on it, that's fine. I just want you to do a little thought exercise and tell me if you think any other countries should be forced to speak every language just because.
In this way,
So no. So the segment stuff around this here, if you see, and this usually happens with people of color, right? Whether or not they're native-born Americans and have grown up their entire life here, or if they're immigrants. How many people have heard the, "Oh wow, your English is so good"? I mean, and stuff like that. So that's kind of the stigma and stuff they're talking about here. But this other country stuff is funny for me because other countries have multiple languages here and multiple natural speaking tongues through there. Now, through some government policies and stuff, they've or over time, certain countries have forced them out and stuff. But like, I'm very very familiar with France. Had a French class 4 years in high school and was the teacher had lived for years in France, so we picked up some of the French culture stuff in class and some of the regional languages and stuff that were spoken here. And the one that gets talked about a lot is Breton, the Breton language of Brittany in France. Completely different. It's a completely different language. It's a Celtic language. It's spoken by the people that fled the British Isles after the invasion of the Anglo-Saxons in the between the 5th and 7th centuries AD. So they formed a diaspora in northwestern France, right out on that top part of the Pentagon there, just to the west of Normandy, right? And for 1500 years, they've largely kept their language intact while still being French citizens and stuff like that. As the nation of France built, right? Didn't become France until later than that, right? You had the different Frankish kingdoms, even portions of France that we take as areas today, like Aquitaine and stuff. There were their own kind of self-governing countries, and they all come together under one big one. But I mean, and Breton is not the only one, right? So there's what is it, Alsatian? I think is the language for around Alsace, which was a hugely disputed territory between France and Germany for hundreds of years, right? So it changed hands frequently. So it's got a very Germanic kind of language to it that's different. Speaking of Aquitaine and southern France, you have the Occitan languages, and then along Spain, there's a large contingent of Basque speakers and ethnicity and stuff. So there's multiple languages in there. Now, the official language is France and it's self here, but these are people that have lived in France for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? That still speak a different dialect as their native tongue. Now, in the case of the Bretons, that's dying out, as I think 90% or more of their speakers are over the age of 65. So that as a native tongue is probably going to go away. But even in Britain, in the UK, there's multiple languages that are spoken, right? You got Welsh, you got Cornish. Some of them are dead as native tongues, but some people pick them up as second ones, right? Or you have the Isle of Man, you have Manx, has gone extinct. You have all these different languages that were, even under the control of England and then the United Kingdom for hundreds of years, were for a long time still spoken by native speakers in there. So it's not something that's unusual, right? Whereas we look at America as just the English as it is, English language, and and it's the immigrants coming in with the different languages is the way we look at it. But that's not so true of all these other countries.
Spanish-speaking family members are stigmatized as others, and speaking Spanish becomes undesirable.
Wow, that's a really good argument you made up that nobody else has made ever, period. You destroyed that argument that nobody is making ever. Wonderful.
You just said speak English earlier in the video, Sinatra.
This process explains why, regardless of country of origin, children of non-English speakers lose their language by the third generation.
That's a really roundabout way of saying people who are immigrants by the third generation speak English, period. Full stop. It took 3 generations to learn English. That's all you're telling me.
These are just a couple examples that demonstrate how social structures construct, limit, and place value on identities.
Now, the only person putting any weight, any value, any thought into the different ideological and identity politic things are you. I guarantee you 99% of people could not care about identity politics if you made them.
This becomes
No. Identities are a big thing people think about, right? Identity politics rises out because people are treated as an identity, right? And the government treats them such a way. Like the black identity in America came about from the way black people were treated in America, right? There's a reason that identity forms, and there's a big argument about whether or not someone's black, right? And this gets into something I talked about at the end of the last one I think I uploaded on YouTube about Sinatra Says, about his molding of the definition of racism, that what makes someone black isn't necessarily genetic or inherited or anything like that. It's how society treats you, right? So if the society treats you as black, you're black, right? And it comes in, so it's a whole bunch of things that come in here, but this is how the identity works, right? So you had so like the LGBT identities, right? And the identity politics, quote unquote. We had anti-sodomy laws in this country that weren't ruled unconstitutional until 2003. I was in high school. There's still 7 states that were arresting people who are LGBT and throwing them in jail, right? Because just simply for being LGBT. So you wonder why they focus on like an identity there here, and they organize around this identity that's being attacked.
Becomes highly problematic when school completion, racial profiling, poverty, and health disparities are associated with specific identities.
I mean, you say associated with specific identities like you're trying to be sly, but you draw a picture of a black guy getting arrested by a cop or pulled over. I think the racist person here, again, is you, because you're the one associating poverty, crime, all that stuff with black people. Nobody else. You are. There are more poor whites in jail, etc., than there are blacks.
And that's why Trump, when talking about the suburbs being ruined, right? That is a clear dog whistle for African Americans, right? Or other black and brown people of color, right? That's what it's for, right? Because that's who the poor are. That's why the whole white flight stuff, right? These are all things that are tracked in history, are well known, and this is just somebody who doesn't care to bother at all to educate. Just no, it's you people that are focusing on stuff. We don't fucking care. It's like Trump seems to think the white women in the suburbs care an awful lot about whether or not there's a black or brown person living near them.
Just the way it is.
Social messages from schools, peers, and the media are conflicting. They tell us that all men are created equal despite what is actually reinforced by everyday interactions.
All right, you're being just vague enough to skirt around, I don't know, anything, but you're not actually saying anything. You're just saying, well, bad things happen even though all men are created equal. Yeah, duh, things happen. It's called reality. But if you want to get into statistics, we can definitely do that, but I don't think we're going to.
Like the
Yeah, so this is like Sinatra is just a product of what this video is talking about, right? The product of the society that does this here, that he's going to go and treat as a, well, no, these are inherent things. These are all that stuff there. I'm not pushing it on there, pushing it onto these people and stuff like that.
classic example of a white woman who guards her purse in the elevator when a black man enters.
Oh, okay. That's what we're going with. That's where we're making our arguments for racism in America. That a woman is guarding her purse. How dare she try to keep her valuables?
I mean, it's the clasping the purse when they see a black person thing, Sinatra, right? You can't be this fucking stupid. I mean, maybe you're just being that way because your audience will eat the shit out of it. just eat this shit up.
Clash begins when the social messaging and the actual experiences do not match.
Well, that's the great thing about science and I guess social science is that just because somebody has a lived experience does not mean that it is indicative of the nation as a whole. One person has a bad time somewhere, not everybody has a bad time somewhere. That's not how that works. Lived experiences are just anecdotes, nothing more.
We cannot.
So, this is like, he wants to talk about people being vague and not get into the points or anything like that there. He's like, oh, racism doesn't exist and stuff. It's like, well, if that's the social message you're raised up with and thought and you keep presenting, and the lived experience of people of color in this country is like, no, it's still very racist against us. We see it here and all this other stuff. And these other interactions. And then the social scientists see it in all these other interactions. We see systemic racism still in this country. This is what is the lived experience that people say, hey, it's still there, it still exists. We have the data here that shows. It's like, oh shit, it does. Maybe we should do something about that. But Sinatra wouldn't want us doing anything about that.
Not be equal if we define one group as better or even superior to another based on gender or racial identification.
Well, here's the crazy thing about that is the only people doing that are you. You're the people doing that. You're the one saying black people need help with this. They need white people's help with this. White people can't do this because black people won't be allowed to. That's you doing that. Nobody else. So I guess, in a way, you're a real racist because you think black people can't do stuff white people can. You are projecting right now.
Whiteness.
No, this is the projection is all yours, Sinatra. Right? Like, we have all the data on this. It's pretty clear. It's pretty uncontested in social sciences on this stuff, on these issues being the case. And hey, we should fix those, right? And we should make it so that we live to the standard that all men are created equal, or all people are created equal. If you want to go beyond there, beyond just like the neutral use of men. But I tell you, no, you're the real racist for understanding this shit happens. Like, come on, dude.
Is the preferred norm, the identity that all other identities are compared to or contrasted against.
You are literally the one here making it a black-white thing. So what do you have black to compare to? White. We can compare black to Asian, black to Hispanic, even though that's an ethnic group, not a race. Black to Middle Eastern, black to black. We can compare everything every which way. But you're the one making it black and white.
The norm.
Now, what's funny about that is that he thinks Middle Easterners aren't white. Middle Easterners are not white. Which, white people here don't tend to treat them that way. But it's always funny when I see online. There was I'll have to go dig up that tweet and probably script a whole video around this idea and this situation and kind of delve in deeper on that. That'd be a fun one to look at here. That saw these schools and for their reporting for demographic reportings and stuff. Under white, they had a whole bunch of Middle Eastern and North African nations, ethnicities to say white and stuff. And they're like, oh, hey, look at me and all the Arabs here and stuff that are now white in this situation. Just like, that's been the status for, going on almost a century now. Codified into the U.S. Census law, right? There was as much as we like to push the melting pot idea, technically it was, but it was largely, there's legal status around whether or not you were white, if you could be citizen and stuff like that. Was still something pushed even into the 20th century. And so there's a lot of pushes to get like Jews classified as white, so they saw Armenians being classified as not white at the end of the 19th century, and Jews pushed pretty hard and got the classification of white so they could say white. Well, so though in the 20th century, Middle Easterners, specifically from Syria, were facing whether or not they were considered white in the early part of the 20th century, right? So there's even Supreme Court cases declaring Syrians white. Now, it was inconsistent after that whether or not if it was extended beyond just Syrians or included all of Arabs and North Africans as white. There's Supreme Court cases dealing with this stuff. Court cases abound up until about the 1940s, when the U.S. government classified Caucasian white people as anybody with ancestry from Europe, North Africa, or the Middle East. Right, and it's largely based on the whole Caucasoid, Negroid, Mongoloid racial classifications from the 19th century. But so you see that tweet on here, I'll find it and do the video on it, but going, oh man, we made it into the white category now. It's like, you've been there for about 100 years now, my dude. But it's true. The point I was getting at here was when Sinatra says, like, nobody's making it a white and black thing. There's differences here between there. You can compare them between white, black, or white, black Asian and black Middle Easterners and stuff like that and stuff. So he's doing exactly what this video is talking about.
The norm of whiteness is so strong that it is invisible.
The idea, the norm, quote unquote, of whiteness, quote unquote, doesn't exist, which is why it's invisible. That's all there is to it. It's so strong it's invisible. No, it's invisible because it's not real.
For instance,
I mean, it very much is real, right? Like, so this is one of the complaints that people make about white people wearing dreadlocks and or cornrows and stuff like that, where black people be treated not quite the same. Outside of things like in the entertainment, like rappers and stuff, like if your point is just rappers and stuff, there's it's being acceptable and stuff as your proof there instead of just among the general population. It's not there, so they talk about like that appropriation when white women wear the dreads and are praised for it, and black people who wear the dreads and cornrows and stuff aren't talked about in the same way in their look, or even treated the same way when they have that look, right? So and the whole invisible thing is like, it's so ingrained into our psyches and our conscience that we just don't necessarily see it. We're not consciously being racist assholes for most people.
When describing a person, if their race is not described, the assumption is that they are white.
Not really. Not in the media. If there's ever a story in the media and they're talking about the person in the story, the protagonist in the story, if their race is not described, instantly everybody assumes they are non-white.
Where's that data, Sinatra?
Inequality touches all parts of our lives. Even when we're thinking of starting a healthy family, we assume that education, income, and healthy lifestyles should produce the same healthy birth outcomes regardless of race in the U.S.
Oh, please tell me we're not getting into the doctors hate black people conspiracy. No, it's black women specifically. Doctors hate black women. Please tell me we're not getting into that. That is the most overplayed, blown out, ridiculous, insane conspiracy theory I have ever heard.
Yet research...
I mean, maybe you should look into it, right? Like, who remembers that TikTok nurse that made a whole video, white nurse making the whole video about African American women faking shit, and then she breaks down into the turns like the frantic breathing of the patient into a hip hop track and starts pretending it's a big hip hop thing until she facts it's like, we know when you're faking stuff, right? That was something a nurse felt completely comfortable putting out there on the internet for people to see, to blow up. Like, there's stuff there, but there's other things too. Like, if we go just beyond like the pregnancy stuff, you look at the data. Pregnant, what's the thing? Mortality rates. So when they're giving birth, fatality rates are real bad among African American women and stuff here. So there's some issue in the treatment and stuff of African American women that is found in the data that's not equal or consistent with white Americans. Now, is that something that's being done inherently, being racist and kind of stuff there? Is it just, there's the way we treat people and the way we're taught to treat people and stuff like that is just kind of, I don't want to say, kind of biases it that way, right? And that's something that the researchers look into.
Research indicates that regardless of age, education, income, and healthy behaviors, and unrelated to genetics, Black women in the U.S. have poorer birth outcomes than their white counterparts.
Can you explain what that means? Poorer birth outcomes. What, they lose babies more often, more complications? What does that mean? Anything? Can you give me something to work with here? Because that makes literally no sense.
Black women.
And there you see how he's done none of the research, right? So I brought up like the mortality rates are much higher among African American women, right, than white women, right? And so this would be one of the things that is talking about that, right, explaining that. Despite these variables, we still see this racial disparity. You know, when you account for those variables, right? There's other things. I think their children ended their infant mortality, which is death within the first year after birth, is much higher as well. So there's a whole bunch of things with her that you'd have to dig in through here, but Sinatra can't fucking be bothered and says like, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. I hear that doesn't make any sense to me. Fuck never looking into any of it.
Women experience increased infant deaths, maternal deaths, and low birth weights.
Right, and so
Many
they
scientists
talk about
associate the resulting poorer birth outcomes to increased stress related to experiences of racism.
Yeah, I kind of doubt that many doctors think that, and I doubt that's happening at the rate like that. I'm willing to bet, and again, this is just conjecture because I cannot find where they cited this source or any place else that corroborates this, any reputable place that corroborates this. My bet is that they have more stress because they're alone. They don't have a father with them sometimes.
Oh, and the racism.
They are angry, whatever. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of differences. It's not racism. It's so prevalent, so everywhere that it doesn't exist, that people can't see it.
But how
I mean, when you engage in the racism right there, Sinatra.
How do we have social change and equity when those who are most affected can be demoralized and frustrated by their everyday attempts to achieve the same outcomes as their white counterparts?
Well,
But too, and bringing up the racism to white theory stuff, it just clicked on me here. I could be wrong, but it sounds like that's an African American woman speaking in the video, and Sinatra early in the video thought she was white. So that whole invisible kind of whiteness thing and the default, without thinking of the race and thinking she's white and therefore it's whitey being racist against black people kind of stuff. When his whole structure of this on the left is just white people doing it here, when it's something that sounds like, you know, the ear sounds like they might be an African American woman speaking, which just goes further to prove their fucking point.
we don't. We shouldn't have equity, period. Equity is not a good thing. Equity is equality of outcome, not equality of opportunity. It's not the same thing. It's not a good thing, and we shouldn't have it anywhere, period.
No, that's not how people use equity, right? Like, have you ever seen the meme with the family or the three different heights of people trying to watch a baseball game over the fence, right? There's one that's tall enough to see over as is without a box or whatever, and they explain in the thing it's equality. Everybody gets one box, and they stand up here. Well, the shorter people still don't see over the fence without that box, and they say equity. Well, here we give the boost to the people that need the help, and so it's maybe 3 boxes for the real short person, and then it's 2 boxes for the medium-sized person, and the person that could see over it standing on the ground as is doesn't get a box, right? And that's their view of equity, right? And so in that framework, at least from, as long as we're going to cite memes and stuff here, the equity is the equality of opportunity. That he's saying that equity isn't that, and so we shouldn't have equity. So he's saying we shouldn't have the equality of opportunity.
Our relationship to identity groups can be the key to creating change. Since social inequities occur predominantly to communities of color, social transformation requires, among other things, a mobilization of identity.
That is also very much not true. If we just stop looking at color as a whole altogether, things like this would go away. And guess what? So would racism, because there's nothing to be racist against if we just don't look at color. If we don't have color pervase and dig itself into every aspect of our lives, we're fine. But no, we have to have identity politics in order to stop racism. That makes no sense. We have to kill all these people in order to stop murder. No.
Social movements
Fucking dumb. Like, that's the dumbest thing you could ever say. Right? So, anti-sodomy laws, right, for the LGBT community. Do you think maybe in order to get rid of the anti-sodomy laws that LGBTQ people should form a coalition around that to argue against that? Or is that too much identity politics? You know, killing all the people to end murder. It's like, no, that's not it. Or for African American people, for things like redlining, or even before like just civil rights stuff, right, and slavery and all that stuff. After that, for things that affect more recently than those things, right? You know, indirect effectiveness and stuff. So if they're redlining and keeping one group of people out of there based on their race, do you think maybe that group of people should form a coalition around their race, right, and their political movement to fix that shit? Oh, no, don't do that, right? It's that, you know, it's that kind of stuff that's really, really, the brain rot of the anti-SJWs.
movements based in identity, such as the Black Liberation Movement, the Chicano Movement, and the Women's Rights Movement, harness identity by educating people about social structural inequality and its impact on them.
Yeah, that's stupid. All that was stupid. Every bit of that is stupid. If you...
All right. I don't know if he's still going to do a little more, but we'll get past this because fuck him talking about that. And we're just saying that he's just basically saying, yeah, civil rights movement, Martin Luther King, you guys are stupid. You know, you guys are stupid for marching for civil rights. Just stupid. Just imagine that. That's what these fucking people think. And they have the gall to pretend that they're not racist, they're not homophobic, they're not transphobic, they're not any of that. They're not misogynist or sexist or anything like that.
Who cares?
Knowing the invisible history and cultural icons of communities can be used to coalesce people of a shared identity and can call forth other successful historical struggles.
So to fight racism, you have to get races together to stand up to the evil white races. Yeah, okay, if that's what you feel like you got to do, sweetheart. All right, we're going to skip a little bit more ahead because she talks about shit that I just don't care about.
I mean, apparently this whole thing is shit you don't care about, right? Like that, you know, shit you don't care about, that you're going to pretend that, to end racism. All right, get all the racists together and we go kill Whitey is what she's saying, right? Like, how disingenuous can you be as a person?
As people committed to social change, the questions for us are, how much do we really understand about the history and legacies of the communities in which we work?
I understand that just because things were bad once doesn't mean they will always be bad no matter what. I understand that I cannot hold people accountable for what their ancestors before them did, nor should I be held accountable for what my ancestors before me did. People are not who their elders were. I'm sick of it, and I bet they are too. No black person wants to hear their life is inherently going to suck just because somebody in their family lineage might have been a slave. Maybe. Probably not.
And
so, this is dumb. Nobody's saying that society is going to be bad forever and it has to be bad just because it was bad in the past, right? What they're saying is we got to fix this stuff because the bad shit we did in the past, while we may have fixed some of it, still leaves bad shit in the present that's causing issues that we should fix now. Right? That's how simple it is. Right? That's the simple thing. It's like the complete disingenuous brain rot of Sinatra is unbelievable.
as both insiders and outsiders of these communities, how do we use the power of narrative informed by cultural histories of contribution, resistance, and justice to activate change in grassroots community organizing?
You don't. You don't use things that happened 200, 300, 400, 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago to inform stuff that you're trying to do right now. You don't do it because there's no urgency in it. That's really it. It sucks, and I'm sure it sucks to hear, but that's the way it is. I'm all shoulders, shrugging right now. I don't know.
What? Like, so you can't use the past to inform how we should operate and advocate today or do anything today, right? So why the fuck do you right-wingers harp so much on what the founders said and thought, right? Oh, fuck the founders, right? In that, don't look to anything that they did for advancing what they wanted, right? Fuck them, don't fix. They're not somebody we should look to, right? That's how fucking stupid you sound.
Oh, okay. Apparently she didn't know either because she just never answered the question. Oh, these people are fucking amazing, aren't they? Oh my God. I don't even know what to say. I'm mad at the person who sent it to me. You know who you are. Have a good weekend, guys.
So that does it for that one. As we can see, Sinatra is fucking stupid, right? And he revels in how stupid he is. Alright, well, in that one, we'll get the Tim Pool one.